You've heard the stories. Vikings in longships, axes raised, burning monasteries, stealing silver. But here's what nobody tells you. The most valuable thing on that longship when it left England or Ireland was never gold. It was a 15-year-old girl, captured, terrified, worth more in a single market day than a warrior made in a year of raiding. The Viking Age ran on human beings, and the numbers will make your stomach turn. Here's where you need to understand something. The Vikings didn't stumble into slavery. They perfected it into an industrial operation. Raiders knew exactly which villages to hit and when. They knew spring raids on Irish monasteries produced the most captives because the monks were isolated and the weather kept reinforcements away. They knew Frankish coastal towns held young women whose fair skin fetched premium prices in Eastern markets. They knew the fall harvest season meant farm workers were in the fields and easy to round up. This wasn't random violence. It was targeted extraction. But that's only half the story. The real horror was the supply chain. A captive taken in Ireland didn't stay in Ireland. Viking traders moved human cargo across a network that stretched from the North Atlantic to the Middle East. Dublin became a processing hub, one of the largest slave ports in Western Europe. Captives were sorted by age, sex, and physical condition. The strong were separated from the weak. Families were split apart forever. From Dublin, ships crossed the North Sea to Hedeby in Denmark, where a sprawling market traded humans alongside furs, iron, and amber. From Hedeby, captives went east, down the great rivers of Russia toward the Volga, where Arab merchants waited with silver coins. Think about the distance. A woman captured in a monastery raid in Ireland could end up in a slave market in Baghdad. That's 4,000 miles. The Vikings moved human beings across a continent with brutal efficiency, and they kept the system running for 300 years. But here's what makes it worse. We have an eyewitness. In 922 CE, an Arab diplomat named Ahmad ibn Fadlan traveled up the Volga River. He encountered a group of Viking traders and spent weeks observing their customs. What he wrote down is the only first-hand account of how Vikings conducted their slave sales, and it is chilling. Ibn Fadlan watched as Viking merchants brought slave women to the river market. They dressed them in fine clothing, not out of kindness, but to inflate their price. Each woman was inspected by potential buyers the way you would inspect livestock. Teeth checked, hands examined, bill assessed, then sold one by one for silver dirhams. But Ibn Fadlan saw something worse than a market transaction. He witnessed a funeral. A Viking chieftain had died, and according to their customs, one of his slave women was chosen to accompany him into death. She was given alcohol until she was barely conscious. Then she was brought to the funeral ship. What happened next, I want you to understand. Ibn Fadlan described every detail. She was strangled. She was stabbed. Her body was placed beside her dead master. Then the entire ship was set on fire. Ibn Fadlan stood there, a Muslim diplomat from Baghdad, watching a human being sacrificed in a ritual he couldn't stop. He wrote it all down. And here's the brutal truth. Archaeological evidence, mass graves, skeletons with shackles still around their ankles, bones showing trauma from years of forced labor, confirms that what Ibn Fadlan saw was not an isolated incident. Human sacrifice of slaves was practiced across Viking settlements from Sweden to Russia. But the biggest revelation was buried underground for over 1,000 years. Geneticists analyzed the DNA of Iceland's founding population. The first settlers arrived in the late 9th century, Norse men and women who crossed the North Atlantic in longships. But when the DNA results came back, something didn't add up. Approximately 80% of Iceland's founding female gene pool was Celtic, Irish, and Scottish. The male gene pool, meanwhile, was approximately 80% Norse. The numbers tell the story. Norse men didn't bring Norse women to Iceland in equal numbers. They brought Celtic women, women who didn't choose to go, women captured in raids on Ireland and Scotland, transported across one of the most dangerous oceans on Earth, and forced to populate a frozen, volcanic island. The mothers of Iceland were not colonists, they were captives. The Norse word for them was thrall. It meant property, not person, less than human. Under Norse law, a thrall had no rights. Killing another man's thrall was a property crime, like killing his cow. Killing your own thrall was your prerogative. A thrall could be beaten, raped, bred, sold, or killed. There was no legal protection. There was no escape. Archaeologists have found the evidence. Shackled skeletons in mass graves across Scandinavia, bones with healed fractures from years of heavy labor, skulls with blunt force trauma consistent with execution. The thralls who built Viking farms, who tilled the fields while their masters went raiding, who cooked the food and raised the children, their bodies tell the story written nowhere in the sagas. Here's what finally ended it, and the reason why changes everything you think you know about the Vikings. The Viking slave trade didn't end because someone decided slavery was wrong. It ended because of economics and religion. As Scandinavia converted to Christianity in the 10th and 11th centuries, the church pressured Norse kings to stop enslaving other Christians. The raiding targets, Ireland, England, the Frankish kingdoms, had all converted. Enslaving them now meant enslaving your own faith. The political cost became too high. Norway banned the slave trade in 1274. Sweden followed in 1335. The thrall system slowly transformed into serfdom and feudal obligations. It didn't disappear, it evolved. But the industrial-scale human trafficking that had powered the Viking economy for 300 years was over. And here's the final piece. History books gave you the warriors, the longships, the discovery of America, Leif Erikson, Ragnar Lodbrok, the glory of the Viking Age. But the Viking Age was built on the backs of millions of people who never got names, never got graves, never got stories, erased from history so completely that most people today don't even know they existed. Think about that. If these hidden truths about the Viking Age changed how you see history, hit the like button and subscribe. It would really help this channel as we uncover the warrior cultures they erased from history.